It's particularly Queensland time. You're now the Shadow Minister for Queensland Resources. You guys think everything is special in that state, even the resources. Why do you need this role?
Nothing gets better than it is in Queensland, Tom. You know that. You spent a bit of time in Queensland yourself. No, look, seriously, I think the fact that Albo has appointed me to this new role just shows that he gets how important the resources industry is in Queensland. It's a very clear signal to people who work in the industry that Labor supports them, wants to see them have a secure future, while, of course, making sure that we secure some of the new opportunities and the new jobs in renewables as well.
Wouldn't the most serious way to make the actual resources minister based out of Queensland?
Well, Madeleine King, obviously being from WA, big resource state as well.
That trumped you.
Oh, well, she's in Shadow Cabinet. She's more senior than me, and she's been in Shadow Cabinet for a while as well. So, but I think we've already spoken and working very closely together to make sure the resources industry goes well into the future.
What do you think? An increased voice for Queensland here? I mean, shadow voice, albeit?
Well, look, Tom, I mean, that's up to the Labor Party. The Queensland LNP have always supported resources and we've always supported the regions. And, you know, we will always continue to support our coal miners in Queensland as well as our farmers and our fishermen and our forestry workers. And I would hopefully like to think that Senator Watt will continue to support our coal-powered fire stations, most notably Kogan Creek, which was in the Finkel review shown to have the cheapest energy in Australia, $9 a megawatt. There's a very big coal pit out there, 400 million tonnes. Kogan Creek is close to the southern interconnector. It's a Healy power station. It recycles 90% of its water, and there's very good opportunity there to get some cheap, reliable energy into the transmission lines of Queensland.
What did you make of Scott Morrison yesterday? He's edging towards 2050 net zero, it seems. It's now preferable. Comfortable with everything he said?
Yep, comfortable with that. I mean, you know, our first priority has always been cheap and reliable energy and the cost of living for Australians. And look, we're happy to obviously, I mean, personally, you know, I'm got no issues with coal-powered fire stations. Some people do. One technology I'd like to promote is nuclear, along with more dams, because dams can provide both water.
Nuclear's not seemingly going to happen, though, is it?
Well, I mean, it's not going to happen in the short term, but it doesn't stop me from trying to speak out about it as another alternative carbon-free source of energy.
So he was also saying technology, no taxes. I mean, Labor's not talking about, at the moment, a price on carbon. So are you sort of, in one sense, on the same page here?
Well, we're not on the same page because we have a very clear commitment to reach net zero emissions by 2050.
Except not how to get there.
No, and of course there's some time before the election, so we'll make very clear exactly how we expect to do that and lay out a roadmap for people well before the election.
But Chris Bowen's saying, look, this portfolio is actually about the economy and this can all be a positive, and you can outline a way that to do it is not going to hurt the economy, well then the government would do that as well. So.
Well, I probably disagree with you there. I think the problem for the government is that they still have so many people in their ranks, particularly in the National Party, who do not want to see net zero emissions by 2050. There still is a clear difference between the major parties on this. Labor accepts the science of climate change. We've committed to net zero emissions. We are all for securing our current resource jobs, but also grabbing those new ones, and that's where the government is letting the Australian people down.
Well, just finally on that, so you said you've got no issue with net zero 2050. Does that mean you have confidence that climate change is happening, it's affecting Australia, it's affecting the world?
Well, climate change is happening every day, Tom. I mean, it's how you define climate change and the impact on the long-term environment. What I'm focused on...
climate change, though.
Well, what I'm focused on is the fact that Queensland and the Nationals, they're not worried about 2050 targets, they're worried about jobs for workers in the regions. That's who they represent.
Yeah, but I'm just asking you, though, about whether or not you think the reason why we're all talking about this is because we need to do something about it as humankind.
Well, Australia is already doing something about it. We've got the highest uptake of solar in the world. We've got one of the highest per capita uptake of renewables energy in the world. I mean, I don't know how much more you want the coalition government to be doing.
No, but I'm just asking you if you still have any qualms about, you know, for example, the IPCC warnings on climate change, how much things have warmed so far and how much they will.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm happy to take that offline, but I will dispute...
Take it offline?
Well, I'm happy to dispute the IPCC's view on clouds. They're non-committal, so I agree with that. So,
this is the fundamental problem, Tom, and we've talked about this before, is that people like Gerard, Craig Kelly, half the National Party don't believe in the science of climate change. They want to get into an argument.
I just said I believe in climate change.
But they want to get into an argument.
Hysterical climate change arguments that the world's going to end by 2030.
No one's
saying
that.
Isn't constructive. A strong, vibrant economy.
There are still so many people within government ranks like Gerard who dispute the data and the clear science about climate change that Scott Morrison finds it impossible to come out with a policy about net zero emissions. That's obviously bad for the climate, but it also means Australia's losing jobs. Central Queensland, as one region, just as an example, is sitting on a gold mine of solar resources along with other ones, and because this government hasn't got with the program and accepted the science, we're missing out on those jobs.
We have record investment actually in solar right now, but it's interesting amongst all of this, and you say, well, the problem is on the coalition side, that Labor's felt the need to pivot and say, this is about jobs and economy, and that's going to be Chris Bowen's emphasis. I mean, that seems to indicate you're worried, more voters are worried about the cost than the climate.
Well, I think it's been clear for some time that many Australians want to see that there is an economic benefit from taking action on climate change. And Chris has obviously had a lot of coverage about his remarks over the last few days, but they're actually pretty consistent with things that Albo's been saying ever since he became leader.
The emphasis has changed.
He is probably putting more emphasis on the jobs and the economic arguments, but Albo's very first speech as leader in Perth was talking about the jobs we can create by taking action on climate change.
Okay. Now, it's my understanding Craig Kelly stood up early on in the coalition party room, defended himself against accusations he's undermining the vaccine in some way, saying he's quoting a qualified doctor, and that freedom of expression is vital for the Liberal Party. Is that the overriding principle here? Do we need to start thinking more about we cannot imperil vaccination rates in Australia?
Look, I don't think we should imperil vaccination rates in Australia. I mean, we've got a policy that we've put out there. We're obviously going to use AstraZeneca vaccine first, and then we can get the Pfizer vaccine slowly because it's produced overseas and it's got to be stored at minus 70 degrees and it's going to be punched out through hospitals. Look, Craig, puts posts up on his Facebook page from other doctors and things like that. He puts that view out there. I'm not going to speak on behalf of Craig. He's entitled to.
Do you have full faith in the TGA?
Yeah, I do. Yeah. I've said that, and I said that last time. I just want to go back to one comment, though, about the idea of jobs in central Queensland. We import solar panels. We import the windmills, all that stuff. So I'm yet to see how the jobs are going to come from renewables. There might be an initial kick in the construction of renewables, but the long-term impact's not going to be there.
Maybe there's a plan where we don't import them, though.
What's that, sorry?
Maybe the government could come up with a plan where we don't import them.
By reducing energy costs through using cheap renewable energy.
Well,
that's the cheapest form of energy.
Well,
Your own government says so.
The cheapest form of energy, as per the Finkel report, as I just said to you before, was the Cogan Creek coal mine at $9.
But that's one. That doesn't mean that.
Well, and Millmerran,
coal across the border,
and Toorong,
or new coal is cheaper though, does it?
New coal, the Queensland coal-powered fire stations are run. The coal is owned by the people of Queensland.
But new Healy coal-fired power plants aren't particularly cheap, are they?
But they're not new. Cogan Creek's not new.
I understand that, but
brownfield expansion. Well, yeah, exactly. So there's 400 million tonnes of coal out there. So that's.
But there are several members of your government who want to see public funding for a new coal-fired power station when we actually have cheaper, more reliable, cleaner forms of energy in the future.